Good evening. I'm Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett in the King 5 newsroom. On this Friday night, we will be in first alert overnight Friday into Saturday as we're tracking a pretty beefy storm that's going to be moving in. It's got a little bit of something for everybody. Big waves along the coast, including some flooding concerns, some steady snow in the mountains, but even some gusty winds in the lower elevations as we go into the final days of autumn. Yeah, it's going to end on a bit of a wet note. So we'll see some increasing rain and wind overnight Friday into Saturday. It looks like those winds will be peaking right around 9 a.m. on Saturday. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Now, the good news is there's going to be some fresh snow for the mountains, but the bad news is it's also going to be in the passes as well. And that new advisory has been lowered down to 3,000 feet. So we're seeing snow that's accumulating and sticking even at Snoqualmie Pass tonight. Stevens, yeah, it's got some accumulating snow as well. One of the bigger stories, though, is the potential for coastal flooding around the high tide through the weekend. Now, we've got a full moon on the 15th, so that's already creating some king tides, but we've also just got some very stormy seas. And what that's going to do is push some water levels in. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now, the coast, we're going to see some gusts that'll be over 45 miles an hour, possibly 50 as well. We could see that up towards our northern counties. So we're talking about Whatcom, and of course the islands could see some 50-mile-an-hour gusts as well. This is going to be our first wind test since the bomb cyclone. Now, let me preface by saying we are not expecting anything even remotely like the bomb cyclone, but again, there's a lot of loose limbs out there. I've got trees in my neighborhood that are still kind of slightly toppled from the last round. So there's a possibility of some power outages and maybe even some traffic obstruction. So just give yourself a little bit of extra time and be ready just in case the lights flicker. We're also going to see some really high surf along the coast. Rain along, well, pretty much the entire region and some gusty winds. So we have some watches and warnings in place. The one that I really want to draw your attention to is the coastal flood warning. Now remember, this is not an advisory. This is not a watch. This is a warning. National Weather Service getting out in front of this and saying Clallam, Grace Harbor, and Jefferson counties could see some possible damage. They're calling this significant flooding, peaking around 11 a.m. on Saturday when the tide will be high. So we're already going to see elevated tides, but you take some of those winds that are driving those waves up to about 17 and over 20 feet in some spots. It's going to do a couple things. It's going to create what are called sneaker waves. It's those waves that are bigger than the other ones. It can catch some people off guard. And the other thing that's really important about this is that it's razor clam season. A lot of folks out along the immediate coastline trying to dig up some of those clams. Be very careful and be very aware of the difference between low tide and high tide. Again, high tide will be around 11 a.m. on Saturday, and you don't want to be anywhere near the coast when that happens. In fact, just stay away from the coastline if you can. Now, again, it should peak and then start to subside on Saturday as those winds start to back off. Winter weather advisory, again, not a winter storm warning, but still, it's been snowing pretty steadily throughout most of the afternoon and will overnight and will pick up again on Sunday night into Monday. So the current advisory in place until 10 a.m. on Sunday. They may actually have to be extended, and that's everything from White Pass, Snoqualmie, Stevens Pass, and it looks like we're going to see some heavy snow up towards the northern Cascades. Baker is going to get lit up this weekend. Wind advisory is a new addition to the map here. That's going to be in place until 4 p.m. on Saturday for everything that you see in brown here, but I'm expecting winds to gust up over 40 miles an hour, even in the Seattle metro, so don't let your guard down if you have something in the yard that you need to pull in, or again, if you've got some limbs that are already in a precarious place, make sure you're taking care of that early tomorrow morning. Current radar, and again, this is Friday night right around 7:30 that I'm recording this, seeing some widespread and steady rain and a very clear delineation between rain and snow. And you're seeing that lavender color indicating that there are heavier bands of snow making their way through the passes overnight tonight and will continue to into Saturday morning. We're going to see that rain stay steady through most of the night as well. Here's our culprit. It's not a particularly well-formed storm, but what it is right off the coast, and that frontal boundary is going to move in overnight tonight, and so that's what's going to pick up those winds early on Saturday morning. By the time we get to about 3 p.m., this thing will already have made landfall. The center of circulation moves up into British Columbia, and it should stay mellow for a little bit. Bodes really well for Sunday. Now we've got the Seahawks game. 5:20 is the kickoff at Lumen Field. And if the forecast models hold, looks like it's going to stay pretty quiet through most of that until that next delivery moves through. So if you've got tickets, good for you. If not, it will be on King 5 on Sunday Night Football, so you can stay home and watch it from the comfort of your home. Either way, looks like it's going to be a good weekend for football. Now, next system moves in on Monday. It looks good. It's going to bring some more rain and some mountain snow, and then things could mellow out as we go into the second half of the week. And it looks like we will start winter off on a relatively quiet note, which, by the way, is next Saturday. Now, putting the future into motion here as far as wind goes, I've taken all of the cities and all of the numbers off because I want to draw your attention to the colors. Whenever you see purple, that's wind that's in excess of 40 miles an hour. Obviously, it'll be along the coast and out towards the Olympic Peninsula. Clallam County is going to be gusty as well. But as we go through Saturday morning, this is right around 7 a.m. Notice purples all the way up and down Puget Sound and down towards the southern portion of the I-5 corridor and in some of the foothills as well. Remember how Enumclaw got lit up by the bomb cyclone? Again, not expecting 60 or 70 mile an hour winds, but it's certainly possible that they could be 40. By the time we get into right around midday on Saturday, it goes from being gusty to breezy, and then again slacks very nicely for us on Sunday. Still gusty along the coast, but now the wind is offshore, and it shouldn't be as much of an issue as it will be on Saturday. Put the future into motion as far as rain and snow goes. Again, we see the bulk of that heavy rain moving through on Friday night into Saturday, and then Saturday morning, that's when the frontal boundary moves through, so we will see some bands of heavy rain, especially along the Kitsap Peninsula, portions of Mason County. We'll see some bands of heavy rain there as well, but it doesn't look like it's going to be prolonged. Skokomish River could flood a little bit, but it doesn't look like it's going to be major. And what you notice here is that lavender color never really goes away. It's going to stay pretty steady as far as the snow goes until we get into the later hours of Saturday. And again, things will quiet down, but it doesn't get completely quiet. It kind of stays active in the mountains, at least into Sunday. Again, we catch that really nice breath. This is right around when the Seahawks game will be, so I don't know that it's going to be particularly clear out there, but it doesn't look like it's going to be wet until much, much later, so folks should be able to get home safe. And then boom, we do it all over again. We'll get that next round of rain and mountain snow that moves through Sunday night into Monday. As far as snow potential goes, again, it's already sticking and accumulating at Stevens and at Snoqualmie Pass. And by the time we get into Sunday morning, look at that, well over 2 feet at Baker. Looks like Paradise is going to close in on 2 feet as well, but all of our resorts really get that shot in the arm that they need. Snoqualmie and Alpadal haven't opened yet, but it looks like they've got a pretty good chance of doing that because not only will it snow very nicely, but it looks like snow levels will support keeping it in place. In fact, it gets downright cold Sunday into Monday. And then as we go towards next week, those snow levels will start to lift up again, but by that point, it'll be dry. It's going to be cold out there as well. Overnight low temperatures will be in the 30s and 40s across the region, and it's not going to be particularly warm on Saturday either. We're talking about upper 40s and lower 50s. 7-day forecast shows us in a relatively active start to the weekend, but again, once we get that system out of here, Sunday should be a pretty decent day, especially for the Seahawks game. Stay warm, stay dry, keep it tuned to King 5 and K5 Plus throughout the weekend.